Talking about the relationship between faith and reason, talking about some of the building blocks of reason in regard to the existence of God. We talked about the universe shows forth great order, and that suggests that there was an intelligence that ordered it. The Catholic apologist G.K. Chesterton said, if you find a watch in the desert, you know that it didn't just happen, right? So it didn't just spontaneously appear. It's many components spontaneously created and then blown together by the desert winds, right? You find a watch in the desert, and you know that somebody designed it, and somebody manufactured it, and somebody left it there. Now, the universe, of course, is far more complex than a watch, and so the universe couldn't have just happened either. The way Chesterton put it, he said, show me a watch without a watchmaker, and I'll accept a universe without a universe maker. Welcome to No Nonsense Catholic. I'm your host, Matthew Arnold, and the confusion stops here. I'm Matthew Arnold for VMPR. We're talking about the relationship between faith and reason, and the church and science, and the nature of truth. You know, I'm going to say to you right now that at first glance, some of the things that I'm about to say may appear intolerant, particularly in our modern society where, people believe that whether or not you believe in God, or anything else for that matter, whether you're a woman who believes that she's a man, or a man who believes he's a woman, or somebody thinks they're both or neither, that all of that is just a matter of personal choice. And this, of course, is the fruit of the notion that what's true for one person may not be true for another. That there isn't any one right way to understand anything. Now, in contrast, Catholicism is based on reason and faith in the revelation of God. So we claim to teach things that are true for everybody, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. In other words, things that are objectively true. And St. Thomas Aquinas said, truth is conforming the mind to reality. Truth, simply put, is what's real. And the basic building block of rational thought is that a real thing can't be both true and false. Okay, a thing's true or it isn't, and the same thing goes for God. You can't, most especially, it's called the principle of non-contradiction. A thing can't be and not be in the same sense at the same time. So unlike a subjective truth, which is really just a matter of personal preference, like what kind of music you like or what food you like best, objective truth isn't determined by opinion, not even popular opinion, not even sincerity of belief, because you can believe something sincerely and be sincerely wrong. For years, I've been using the example of a group of skydivers. Let's assume there's a group of skydivers, take a vote, they decide not to believe in the law of gravity. And they really believe it. I mean, they're so sincere that they decide to go up in a plane and jump without their parachutes. Now, what would happen? They would plummet to the earth like so many bags of wet cement. And that's the same thing it is with God and with his revelation and with the things that can be known by reason. Whether they're true or not don't depend on you or your personal choice any more than gravity does. And anyway, tolerance. Tolerance does not mean accepting all points of view as equally valid. All right, can we underline that? Tolerance, let me say that again, does not mean accepting all points of view as equally valid, because obviously they're not. What tolerance means is to welcome different points of view while respecting the other person, even though you might not necessarily agree. And that we could use more of. This is the basis of charity. This is Christian love. But love and tolerance are not the same thing. Archbishop Fulton Sheen said it very well. He said, Christian love bears evil, but does not tolerate it. It does penance for the sins of others, but it is not broad-minded about sin. He said, the cry for tolerance never induces the church to quench its hatred of the evil philosophies that have entered into contest with the truth. And he put truth, capital T, meaning our Lord Jesus Christ. Love forgives the sinner and hates the sin. It is unmerciful to the error in his mind. The sinner will always take back into the bosom of the mystical body, but his lie will never be taken into the treasury of his wisdom. Real love involves real hatred. Whoever has lost the power of moral indignation and the urge to drive the buyers and sellers from the temples has also lost a living and fervent love of the truth. Charity, then, he says, is not a mild philosophy of live and let live. It is not a species of sloppy sentiment. Charity is the infusion of the Spirit of God, which makes us love the beautiful and hate the morally ugly. And with that in mind, let us proceed. Now, the first challenge, that I want to talk about is that faith is irrational. This is very popular over the last, during my lifetime. It's ridiculous to believe in God, believe in all those fairy tales. It's irrational to have faith. Now, first off, faith and reason go together. Imagine, if you will, a choo-choo train, right? Like an engine, and that engine's pulling a car, and behind that there's a caboose. And now imagine that the engine represents facts, okay? What can be known about God and nature by reason? What can't be known by us without him telling us, so in other words, his revelation. And those teachings of the church that have been defined as de fide, as being of the faith. So faith and reason and guided by the magisterium. That's the engine, the facts. And then the car that follows it, that's faith. That's the trust that we have in Christ, in human reason, in the authority of the church that Christ established. And then the caboose would represent the feelings that flow from this, right? Religious sentiment has a place, and it does flow from that, but you can't pull a train by the caboose. Okay. So faith, by definition, faith means to believe in something that you can't prove. I mean, there are many mysteries of faith that are simply above human reason, although not opposed to it. So faith means believing in something you can't prove, but it doesn't mean believing in something for no reason. That would be irrational. 1998, St. John Paul II wrote a 41-page encyclical on faith and reason, just to show how they go hand in hand. And he said, and I quote, "There can be no contradiction between faith and reason." Now, I don't have time to read the 41 pages, but I can give you the shorthand version. Say you want some chicken soup. So what do? You go to the supermarket and you find the soup aisle and you look for a can that says, chicken soup, say Campbell's chicken soup. And then you buy it and take it home. Now, let's stop and think about this for a minute. Why do you think that can has chicken soup in it? Well, because of the label, right? But that's not proof. Might have the wrong label on it. Somebody at the factory could have put on the wrong label by mistake, or the Campbell's people, for reasons of their own, perhaps have mislabeled it. And maybe inside that can there's tomato soup or clam chowder, or it might not be soup at all. Maybe it's creamed corn or baked beans. Stop and think about it. There's 100 things might be in that can. But you buy it believing that it's chicken soup because you have reasons to believe. Because the can is in the soup aisle. And the label does say chicken soup, and Campbell's is a reputable company. So you trust that they put the right label on it, and you trust that the supermarket put it in the right aisle. And so even though you don't have proof that there's chicken soup inside, you buy it on faith. Faith is not proof, but it's not irrational. In fact, this little example shows that you can't live your life without this natural faith. And religious faith is also a matter of trust based on reasons to believe. So the cry of the atheist then is, well, if God exists, prove it. And what they mean is prove it empirically. They would say scientifically. Well, but you can't prove God in that way. Science is about the study of the physical world, and God exists outside of the physical world. Can't put God under a microscope. Now, what some people don't seem to understand, what they don't realize, is you don't have to prove something empirically for it to be true. And I can give you a good example right off the top of my head, and that's love. You can't prove love scientifically either. You can't put it under a microscope any more than you can God. But love, peace, justice, freedom. Who's to say that these things don't exist? You see, this isn't due to some, fault or limitation on the part of God or on the part of love or freedom or justice, but the limitations of science. Because some things are beyond the purview of science. And science may not forbid you to believe in something that it's not competent to judge. God, like love, is outside the purview of science because it is not a matter of physics, but a matter of metaphysics. So the existence of God is beyond empirical proof. And by the way, if it weren't, then we wouldn't be talking about God. However, the church teaches that the existence of God can be known by reason, and by reason alone. And for this we turn not to the physical sciences, but you have to go down the hall to the philosophy department. And you may be surprised to learn that the ancient Greek philosophers came to the conclusion that there is only one God, and that God had certain attributes, that he was eternal and all-knowing and omnipresent and so on, through the use of reason alone. Completely apart from divine revelation. St. Paul was himself a Hellenistic Jew. That means he was steeped in Greek culture and he had that classical education. And he knew very well that the pagan philosophers had demonstrated the existence of God through natural philosophy, through reason. And that is why he can write in his letter to the Romans, chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, "For what can be known about God is evident to them, because God made it evident to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes of eternal power and divinity have been able to be understood and perceived in what he has made." In other words, the first way to know God is through the natural world. It's through the observation of the creation, the universe. And today, precisely because of advances in science, we can observe the universe better than we ever been able to before. And so there are a number of things that we can observe regarding the universe. And I think I'll have time for one before we go to the break, and that's order. There's order in the universe, but order requires an orderer, right? The scientists now, they're the ones that tell us that we live in this vast galaxy that stretches out, 13 billion light years in every direction. And maybe there's as many as 1 billion more galaxies beyond our own. But our galaxy, the Milky Way, is spinning at the incredible speed of almost 500,000 miles an hour. And even at that speed, it takes 200 million years to make a single rotation. And I don't know if any of this is really correct or not, because I'm not a scientist. This is revealed knowledge. But what I do know is that this complex ocean of spinning stars and planets functions with an amazing order and efficiency, just like somebody designed it that way.